Hello and welcome back to the Sabbath Show. Today we are doing my 2023 wishes for the Carlton Football Club. And basically, well, we've got 8 or so on the side here. I'm just going to run you through each one, what they mean basically. And if you have any wishes for 2023 and what the season will hold, make sure to share those in the comments with me and I will respond to them with haste. Anyway, let's get into it. So the first one's pretty self-explanatory. You can see, make finals. I mean, it's pretty simple. Get the job done, get, at least 13 wins and happy days. We've been waiting on it for so many seasons. We've got a list here that definitely should be making the jump, in the next 12 months. So if we do anything less than that, I guess you could say it's a failed year. And obviously, it's dependent on a number of things, and one of those being a healthy list, which is my second wish. Last season, we missed so many players. So many players were lost. We know how some of them were more integral to our system than others, but overall, injury after injury, it got to a certain point where you couldn't really hold off anymore. It was very visible that we were getting affected by it. So, let's just hope going into this year that we can actually, ensure that our key pillars are on the park for as long as possible, number one. And number two being, those role players that really fit the gaps in our 22 that sometimes, are a bit difficult to fill. Hopefully those guys can also, ensure that they are on the park as much as possible. All of this will give us the best chance of making finals and then going further into September. Now, the third point, this is sort of building off what I just said, but an early Sam Walsh return, and we know this guy's basically the engine room. If there was a definition of the engine room, he is it. Runs his guts off all day. It really pays testament to his hard work and his dedication to the task. But obviously the absence will be felt. Because when you can't count on skill to win games, it's all about work ethic and that gut running and all those little itty bitty things that they're the intangibles basically. Sam Walsh is probably one of the best at the intangible stuff. So losing him will ultimately be a big test for our playing group, especially the midfield, but I think it's one of my big wishes that he's able to return as soon as possible, because some things are irreplaceable, and as much as effort is one of those things you bring on a game-by-game basis. I do think that Sam Walsh, it doesn't matter what situation it is, what team we're playing, he always brings 100%, whatever the weather. The fourth point on my list is 4 quarters, and I guess you would probably know what this means. Playing 4 quarters. Last season we lost out on percentage, in getting in the top 8, and one of the reasons for that was, simply put, we did not put sides away earlier in the season. Your Hawthorns, your Port Adelaides, Sydney, the Bulldogs. We had opportunities to really, put the foot down and get the job done convincingly, and those percentage points that we would have gotten from big wins would have taken us a long way in getting into September and potentially, going on a run. But ultimately it wasn't to be. And we didn't have the upper hand because of what we had left on the pitch or on the field. I've been watching too much soccer recently, football, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's really that simple. Especially against good football sides, you can't afford to play 2 quarters, and that's simply enough. We have to play 4 quarters. We have to bring the energy and the effort from the first bounce. And, there were times this season where it was really puzzling, coming out halftime, 3-quarter time, the same energy was not brought to the table, and it cost us in some situations. And then you've got, the Carlton-Collingwood game where we were up 4 goals and the opportunities were presented and we, simply put, we didn't punish on the scoreboard. So it's just a matter of playing a really consistent 4-quarter performance that displays an excellent brand of footy. The next point says Crips Repeat, and you're probably wondering, well, what the hell does this guy mean by this? Well, Simply put, I just want a repeat of Crips last year, this year. In terms of just being one of those game breakers, big bodies, just being an absolute pain in the ass to have to cope with as a midfield. You know, that explosive running power he has, you know, the ability to go forward and kick goals. He had an excellent start to the year, was a dead eye on the set shot, so he was a problem. And then in the back half of the season, he sort of, you know, slowed things right down, but ultimately was able to win the Brownlow. I'm not saying he's going to win the Brownlow or I want him to win the Brownlow, because as far as I'm concerned, team success is more important than individual success. But that said, we need Patrick Cripps to be at his best in order for us to take the next step. The next one is H and Charlie Fire. And basically by this I mean Harry and Charlie. There's games where they seem to always be, you know, replacing one another. And what I mean by that is Harry will score 5 and Charlie will score 2. Then the next game you've got the inverse. So basically what I just want is Harry and Charlie to be such a formidable attack that every single defense in the league is going to be very scared to come up against them, number one. And number two, you know, opposition teams are envious of the forward line we have. And last year, you know, Harry Mackay was not as good as he was in his Coleman medal winning year, obviously because Charlie had taken the mantle. But regardless, I do think, you know, at the back end of the year when we were struggling to, you know, exceed 80 points, you know, we lost to Melbourne having scored under 80. Same with Collingwood. And there were some games where, you know, we probably needed to pile on the goals, and, you know, the midfielders delivering the ball into the forward line probably had something to do with that. But at the same time, they did fall away in some games and, you know, take some really irrational set shots where they do snaps from about 15 meters out directly in front, and you know, sometimes it would leave a little bit more to be desired. So look, I just hope that both those guys, more often than not, can at least score 3 each a game. That is such a big ask, but that is why it's a wish of mine. If that can come to fruition, we could be the best team in the league. Definitely the best offensive team in the league. The next pointer is pressure, no fuss. And what do I mean by this? Well, simply put, pressure is no fuss. You know, we're not overcome by the big moment. We're not, you know, overwhelmed by it all. You know, obviously in the games in the back end of the season where we needed to win those games, you've got the Adelaide game, we didn't, you know, match their pressure, and we knew the situation. Brisbane, we didn't, you know, for the first 2.5, 3 quarters, we weren't present. The Collingwood and Melbourne games, there were lapses in the back end of the game that ultimately cost us dearly. But the key this year that I hope for and I wish for is that, you know, these moments that we had last year will allow us to be better than last year in terms of those moments where you have to make, you know, quick thinking decisions, and, you know, you have to have a sound game plan in the closing and really stick to what you've been working at all season long. I mean, you know, Melbourne, Carlton, right? You know, that last couple of minutes, you know, that game was hanging in the balance, and we weren't able to, you know, hold Cozzy Pickett accountable. There was just a little bit of space, and you know, there was a fair bit of ease in the way Melbourne were able to get it that deep into the forward 50. You know, we also had a fair grapple on the game as well, with possession in the final minute and a half or whatever it was. But you know, those little moments, we should have learnt from that in the week following, but we didn't. So the key is, next year, can we learn from those 2 games and bring everything we learnt, all that knowledge together, band it into one, and then apply it on a game-by-game basis if required. So that is just something I wish for. It would do my blood pressure and anxiety a world of good. So yeah, let's hope that's the case. Obviously, I'm wishing for it, so let's see how we go. And the last talking point for today in terms of wishes is that we get a beast small forward, and we've got quite a few small forwards at the club, and I think the player I'm alluding to the most is Jesse Motlop. That guy, obviously rookie season last year, and it wasn't a bad season by any means. He kicked some big goals in some games that we won, some games that we lost. But ultimately, you know, there weren't too many games where he'd kick a bag, if there were any. You know, he probably didn't kick more than 2 or 3 goals a game. I reckon 2 was the max. So, look, as much as Harry and Charlie are excellent, and, you know, them combining for 8 a game would be unbelievable, I do think I'm a little bit greedy by saying this, but I want a small forward that can average, or not average, but reach new heights and really tap into a new ceiling, because, yeah, we don't have a small forward that's really breaking down the door in terms of goals. You know, Tyson Stengel did that for the Premiership winning team last year. You know, Tom Papley has done that for Sydney over years. So, look, I think one of the keys is that, you know, especially down the line, down the stretch, you know, going into September, you know, Collingwood and Melbourne, those games where we needed goal kickers, Charlie and Harry weren't very accurate. And usually good teams have a small forward that can bail, you know, key forwards out of bad games by scoring 3 or 4 of their own. So I really want to, well, I'm hoping that we have a small forward that we can count on to kick a bag when required. But the odds of that happening, I'm not sure. Is it a big ask, you know, asking Jesse Motlop to be the guy? Potentially. But, you know, as I said, it's a wish for a reason. Anyway, that'll do it. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure to share your thoughts about your wishes for 2023. I don't know if these were far-fetched or not. Some of them perfectly reasonable, but nonetheless, I hope they all happen. Anyway, have a great rest of your day. We will be doing more Carlton content as the you know, the season draws closer, but for now, have a great rest of your day. We will see you soon, and have a good one. See you later.